Under the blood-red sky of Virion 4, explosions shook the ground like thunder. Smoke curled up from burning machines, and the air smelled of metal, fire, and fey. Captain Raiden Cole ran through the ruins, his armor cracked, his pulse pounding in his ears. The war between humans and the alien race known as the Valari had turned this world into a graveyard. Yet through the chaos, he heard something strange, a soft cry. It was not the sound of a soldier or a weapon. It was the sound of a child. Raiden froze for a second, trying to believe what he had heard. Another explosion roared behind him, sending dust into the air. But the cry came again, faint and scared. Without thinking, he followed the sound. His boots sank into the ash-covered ground as he moved deeper into the ruins. His visor flickered with static as he switched to night vision, scanning the shadows. Then he saw it, a small figure hiding under a broken metal beam. A tiny alien child, no older than 5, trembling and covered in dust. Her skin was blue, her eyes gold, glowing faintly even in the dark. For a moment, Raiden just stared. This child belonged to the enemy. The Valari had killed thousands of humans, and he had lost his closest friends to them. Yet when he saw her small hands covering her face, something inside him refused to walk away. She was just a child, terrified and alone. The sounds of battle echoed closer. The human troops were sweeping the area, burning everything alien. If they found her, she would be gone in seconds. He moved closer and knelt beside her. "Hey," he said quietly, trying to sound calm. "It's okay. I won't hurt you." The child looked up, her golden eyes full of tears. She didn't understand his words, but his tone made her stop trembling for a moment. Raiden gently reached out, brushing away the dust from her face. "You need to come with me," he whispered. "You'll die here." Suddenly, a voice cracked through his earpiece. "Cole, where the hell are you?" "We're pulling back to the transport. Leave the zone now." Raiden hesitated. He knew what would happen if he brought the alien child with him. His command would never allow it. They would call him a traitor. But then he heard a rumbling sound, the roof above them groaning under fire damage. He didn't think twice. He scooped the child into his arms just as the structure collapsed behind him. He ran through smoke and falling debris, holding the child close to his chest. Every breath burned his lungs. Every step was pain. But he didn't stop. The girl buried her face against him, crying softly. "It's okay," he kept saying, even though he wasn't sure it was. When he finally reached the edge of the battlefield, he saw the human transport ship lifting off. Too late. He was stranded. Raiden hid inside the shell of the destroyed tank and caught his breath. The girl's small hand gripped his armor tightly. He looked at her again, wondering who she was. Her clothing was torn but finely made. This was not some ordinary alien child. She could be from an important family, maybe even the daughter of a Valari leader. That thought made his heart sink. If the aliens found out a human had her, they would come for him. Hours later, the fires died down. The child fell asleep, curled up beside him. Raiden stared at the burning horizon, thinking about what he had just done. He had saved the enemy's child. There was no going back now. The war was still raging, but he was no longer part of it. He was on his own, behind enemy lines, with a child the universe wanted dead. As the night grew colder, strange lights flickered in the sky, Valari scout drones searching for survivors. Raiden covered the child with his jacket and turned off his helmet lights. The faint hum of alien engines passed overhead. He waited, silent, heart beating fast. When the sound faded, he finally exhaled. The child woke and looked at him, her golden eyes wide. She said something in her language, a soft, melodic tone he couldn't understand. But then she reached out and touched his chest, right over his heart, as if she could feel it beating. That small gesture broke through the walls inside him. For the first time in years, Raiden felt something other than anger and pain. He smiled weakly. "You're safe now," he whispered. "I promise." Far above, on the other side of the planet, a massive alien ship received a faint life signal, one that should not exist. Inside that ship, a tall woman with blue skin and armor stood before a holographic screen. Her eyes widened when she saw the reading. It was the signal of her daughter. The alien mother's name was Commander Valyra, leader of the Valari forces. Her lips trembled as she whispered, "Sarah, my child." Then her expression hardened, cold as steel. "Find the human who is her," she ordered. "Bring him to me alive." Down on the planet, Raiden didn't know that his act of mercy had already set the stars in motion. Somewhere above him, an entire alien army was preparing to hunt him. But in that moment, all he cared about was keeping the little girl safe. He had no idea that the mother searching for her was not coming to thank him. She was coming with fire, rage, and a promise that would change both their world forever. The morning after the battle was cold and silent. Smoke still rose from the ruins of Virion 4, painting the sky in gray streaks. Captain Raiden Cole opened his eyes slowly, his body aching from exhaustion. Beside him, the alien child still slept, curled up in his torn jacket. Her breathing was soft and steady, her small fingers gripping the fabric like she was afraid he would disappear. Raiden sat quietly for a moment, trying to think. He needed to get out of the war zone before human patrols or alien scouts found him. His ship had been destroyed, and his communication link to command was broken. The only thing he had left was a half-empty energy pistol and a promise he didn't understand why he made, to keep the child safe. When the girl woke, she blinked her golden eyes and looked around, confused. She didn't seem to understand where she was. "It's okay," Raiden said softly. "You're safe with me." She tilted her head at his voice but didn't respond. Then she reached out and touched his hand, her blue skin glowing faintly in the dim light. Raiden pointed to himself. "Raiden." Then he pointed at her. "You." She looked at him for a moment, then placed a hand over her chest. "Syrah." The name came out soft and musical. Raiden smiled slightly. "Syrah," he repeated, nodding. She smiled too, a small, innocent smile that almost made him forget they were enemies. But peace never lasted long in war. A sharp beeping came from his wrist communicator. Weak, broken, but still working enough to catch one message. "Attention all human units," a robotic voice said. "Be advised. A Valari child has been reported missing from Sector 12. High Command orders immediate search and elimination of all alien life signs in that area." Raiden's stomach tightened. They were already hunting for her. If his own people found him now, they would kill her without question. He looked at the small girl sitting beside him, holding a broken piece of metal like it was a toy. He couldn't let that happen. "We need to move," he muttered, standing up. He carried Syrah through the forest of metal and ash, avoiding open areas. His training told him to leave her behind, to save himself, but every time he looked into her eyes, he knew he couldn't. They reached an old mining tunnel half buried under the ground. It was dark inside, but it would hide them for a while. Hours passed as they walked through the tunnel. The ground was wet, the air heavy with dust. Syrah stumbled a few times, and Raiden lifted her onto his back. She rested her head on his shoulder, murmuring softly in her alien tongue. He didn't understand the words, but he could feel her trust. It was strange. She wasn't afraid of him anymore. When they finally reached the end of the tunnel, a soft blue light shone ahead. The exit opened into a deep valley filled with glowing plants and quiet streams. It was beautiful, untouched by war. For the first time in days, Raiden felt a small piece of peace. They made a small camp near the water. He found some food from his emergency pack and handed a ration bar to Syrah. She sniffed it curiously before taking a tiny bite. Her face twisted in confusion, and Raiden laughed for the first time in months. "Yeah," he said, "it tastes terrible, but it's food." As night fell, he noticed something strange. Syrah sat near the water, her hands glowing faintly as she touched the surface. The plants around her started to shimmer with more light, like they were answering her. Raiden watched in silence, amazed. She wasn't an ordinary child. Whatever her power was, it was connected to the planet itself. Far above the clouds, in the cold dark of space, Commander Valara stood before her war council. The massive screen showed reports of the destroyed human outpost and a faint trace of her daughter's life signal. Every heartbeat of that signal hit her like a drum inside her chest. Her rage had already turned to obsession. "My daughter is alive," she said, her voice echoing through the chamber. "And she is with a human." Her second-in-command, General Sof, bowed slightly. "We have detected several human transmissions in the area. Commander, we can intercept them." Valara's eyes glowed like burning stars. "Do it." I want that human found. Her fingers tightened around the edge of the console. He will tell me why my child is still breathing, and why she trusts him. Back on the planet, Raiden was sitting near the fire, staring into the flames. His body was tired, but his mind couldn't rest. He knew he couldn't stay here long. Sooner or later, either the humans or the Valari would find him. He looked at Syrah, now asleep under the soft glow of the plants. She looked peaceful, but he could see faint marks on her neck, like she had been hurt before. His heart tightened. Maybe the war had taken more from her than anyone realized. Suddenly, his visor flashed red. Motion detected. Raiden jumped up and grabbed his weapon. In the distance, through the dark trees, lights flickered. 3 human drones flying low, scanning the area. He shut down the fire quickly and pulled Syrah into his arms. Quiet, he whispered. She pressed close against him as they hid behind a rock. The drones passed overhead, their red sensors sweeping across the valley. One stopped, scanning the ground near their hiding place. Raiden held his breath. If they found her, it was over. He aimed his pistol, ready to shoot, when the drone suddenly turned away and flew off. Raiden exhaled slowly, his hands trembling. That was too close. He looked down at Syrah, who was looking up at him with wide eyes. She whispered something softly and pressed her small hand to his chest again, over his heart. He didn't know what she said, but the look in her eyes told him she was thanking him. And for the first time since the war began, Raiden felt like maybe he was doing something right. But in the sky above them, alien ships were already entering human space. Commander Valara had found his trail, and she was coming fast. Night fell heavy on the valley, and the wind carried whispers through the dead trees. Captain Raiden Cole sat awake, watching the fire die down to soft orange embers. The alien child, Syrah, slept peacefully beside him, her small frame curled under his old army jacket. Each breath she took made her faint blue skin glow in the dark, as if she carried a small piece of starlight inside her. Raiden's eyes were tired, but his mind couldn't rest. Every noise made him tighten his grip on the weapon at his side. The war had taught him one thing: quiet never lasted long. Somewhere out there, both armies were hunting. Humans saw him as a deserter, and the Valari, they would kill him just for touching one of their own. He leaned back against a rock and whispered to himself, "You're losing it, Cole." But then Syrah stirred in her sleep and murmured something in her alien tongue. Her voice was soft and filled with trust. He sighed and shook his head. "Guess I can't quit now." At dawn, Raiden packed what little he had and lifted Syrah onto his shoulders. They started walking north, toward an abandoned mining colony he remembered from the old maps. If they could reach it, there might be a way off this planet. But as they walked, he noticed something strange. The ground trembled softly, as if something huge was moving deep beneath the surface. The air itself seemed to hum with energy. Syrah looked up suddenly, her golden eyes glowing brighter than before. She pointed toward the sky. Raiden followed her gaze, and his heart froze. High above the horizon, enormous alien ships were descending through the clouds. Their dark hulls shimmered with green light, casting shadows across the valley. He recognized the pattern on their wings, Valari war carriers. But this wasn't an invasion fleet. There were too few ships for that. They were searching for something, or someone. "Damn," Raiden muttered. He picked up his pace, running through the forest with Syrah holding tightly around his neck. The ships passed slowly overhead, scanning the ground with blue light beams. He dodged behind trees, hiding in the shadows, praying they wouldn't pick up his heat signature. Miles away, aboard the lead vessel, Commander Valara stood tall on the command bridge. Her armor gleamed under the cold light of the control panels. Her long black hair flowed down her back like smoke. The soldiers around her stood silent, afraid to meet her gaze. "Expand the scan range," she ordered. "She is alive. I can feel her presence." Her voice was calm but carried the weight of command that came from years of war. Her second-in-command approached carefully. "Commander, we have found traces of human movement near the old mining valley. One life form matches the human soldier who disobeyed orders during the last battle." Valara's golden eyes flickered with rage. "Then the stories are true. A human took my daughter." She clenched her fists. "Prepare my personal guard. I will find him myself." Back on the planet, Raiden finally reached the old mining colony. The place was abandoned, metal structures half buried in dust, lights flickering weakly from broken solar panels. It wasn't much, but it was shelter. He set Syrah down and scanned the area for any working systems. To his surprise, one of the old comm panels still had power. He connected his broken wrist communicator and managed to send a faint distress signal. "This is Captain Raiden Cole of the Ninth Fleet," he said. "I'm stranded on Virion with a survivor. Request extraction." His voice cracked a little as he hesitated to say who the survivor really was. The signal flickered and died before he got a response. Syrah tugged at his sleeve and pointed at a symbol carved on one of the walls, a star shape surrounded by strange lines. Raiden looked closer and realized it was the same symbol etched into the armor she wore. "That's your people's mark, isn't it?" he said softly. She nodded, eyes wide. Then she placed her small hand on the wall, and for a moment the entire metal surface glowed faintly blue. Before Raiden could ask what she did, the sound of engines roared overhead. He rushed to the doorway and saw dark shapes moving in the sky, Valari soldiers dropping from the ships. His heart pounded. "They found us," he whispered. He grabbed Syrah's hand. "We have to go." They ran through the maze of rusted tunnels and broken machines, the sound of footsteps and metal clanking echoing behind them. Blue searchlights swept through the colony, scanning every corner. Syrah stumbled once, and Raiden lifted her into his arms again. "Hang on!" he shouted as they reached an old lift shaft. He jumped onto the platform and hit the manual lever. The lift began to rise slowly, grinding its way upward through the dark. He could hear voices below, alien soldiers speaking in the same language Syrah used. Then a voice louder than the others rang out through a speaker, calm, sharp, and unmistakably powerful. "Human," it said, "you cannot hide." Raiden froze. That voice wasn't a soldier. It carried something colder, older, authority. He didn't know who she was, but he could feel the weight of her words. The lift reached the surface, and he ran out into the open air, holding Syrah close. Above, one of the ships hovered, its lights blinding. A beam of blue light shot down, almost hitting him. He ducked behind a pile of scrap metal as the ground shook. Syrah started to cry, terrified. "It's okay," he said, his own voice trembling. "I've got you." Far above, Commander Valara stepped to the front window of her ship and looked down at the surface of Virion 4. On her screen, she saw the heat signatures of two beings, one small, one large, running through the debris. Her jaw tightened. "Lock on," she ordered coldly. "No harm to the child. The human, however, bring him to me." Down below, Raiden looked at the horizon, where more ships were arriving, black shapes blotting out the sky. He knew he couldn't run forever. He didn't even understand why he was risking everything for this child. But when he looked into Syrah's tear-filled eyes, he knew he couldn't stop. He whispered to her softly, "I don't know who's out there, kid, but whoever they are, they're not taking you from me." Above them, Commander Valara's voice echoed through the comms of every soldier, sharp and final. "The hunt begins." The sun had barely risen, yet the air already burned with tension. Smoke drifted across the old mining fields, and every echo carried the sound of movement. Metal against metal, boots against date. Raiden Cole crouched behind a half-collapsed wall, his pulse thundering in his ears. Syrah sat close beside him, clutching his arm tightly, her eyes wide with fear but glowing faintly with courage. They had been running all night. Every time they thought they'd lost the pursuers, more ships appeared in the distance. Now, the colony was surrounded. There was nowhere left to run. Raiden checked his blaster, only 2 shots left. "That's all we've got," he whispered, forcing a grim smile. 2 shots, a half-dead battery pack, and dumb luck. Not exactly great odds. Syrah tilted her head, studying him silently. Then, to his surprise, she placed her small hand over his chest. A faint warmth spread through his armor, and he felt calmer, stronger, somehow. Her glow pulsed brighter, and she looked into his eyes with quiet determination. "You protect," she said in broken English. Raiden froze. That was the first time she had spoken his language. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "Yeah, kid," he said softly. "I protect." Before he could say anything else, a blast ripped through the wall beside them. Dust and debris flew everywhere. Raiden grabbed Sira and rolled to the ground as alien soldiers dropped from the ridge above. Their armor gleamed under the early sunlight, and their weapons hummed with deadly blue light. "Move!" Raiden shouted, pulling Sira behind a pile of mining crates. He fired his blaster twice, hitting one soldier square in the chest. The others returned fire instantly, their energy bolts slicing through the air. The ground exploded beside them, throwing dirt and sparks into the sky. Raiden ducked, coughing through the smoke. "They are not here to talk," he muttered. Suddenly, the firing stopped. Silence fell, heavy and unnatural. Then a voice echoed through the air, calm, commanding, and cold. "Human," the voice said, amplified through the soldiers' comms. "You've shown bravery, even honor, but your defiance ends here." Raiden's heart sank. That voice again, the one from before. He looked up and saw a tall figure descending from one of the ships, surrounded by a squad of guards. She moved like a storm in human form, calm on the outside, but with an energy that made the air tremble. Commander Valira. Her armor shimmered with dark silver, and her long cloak flowed behind her like smoke. The soldiers bowed their heads as she passed. When her gaze finally landed on Raiden, her eyes glowed gold like molten metal. "Captain Raiden Cole," she said, her tone sharp but oddly steady. "You have something that belongs to me." Raiden tightened his grip on his weapon. "She's not a thing," he said flatly. "She's a child. Your people left her to die." For a brief moment, something flickered across Valira's face. Pain, maybe, or guilt, but it vanished just as quickly. "You don't understand what she is," she said quietly. "That child carries the heart of the Valari. She was never meant to fall into human hands." Raiden shook his head. "I don't care what she was meant for. She's alive because I saved her, and I'll keep it that way." Valira's expression hardened again. "You mistake mercy for righteousness," she said. "You think your sacrifice makes you noble, but you've doomed us both." She raised her hand, signaling her guards. "Take him." Raiden fired his blaster, hitting the ground near her feet to force her back. The soldiers rushed forward, and chaos exploded around them. Raiden grabbed Sira and ducked behind a large drilling machine. He fired again, taking down another guard, but there were too many. Sira suddenly pressed both her hands to the ground, and a shockwave of blue light burst out from her small frame. The soldiers stumbled back, their weapons flickering and shutting down. Raiden looked at her in shock. Her entire body glowed now, her eyes burning like tiny suns. "What are you doing?" he shouted over the noise. Sira didn't answer. The light spread outward, reaching the walls of the colony and illuminating strange symbols carved into the metal. The entire area began to hum with energy. Even Valira paused, her eyes widening in disbelief. "No," she whispered. "She's awakening." Before Raiden could move, beams of light shot into the sky from the ground, creating a huge column of energy. It reached far into the clouds, visible for miles. The shockwave sent both humans and aliens flying backward. Raiden hit the ground hard, pain shooting through his ribs. When he opened his eyes, everything was quiet again. The soldiers were gone, knocked unconscious or retreating. The ships above flickered, struggling to maintain flight. And in the center of it all stood Sira, glowing faintly, breathing hard. Her energy slowly faded until she collapsed. Raiden crawled to her side, lifting her gently into his arms. She was unconscious but alive. "Hey, kid, stay with me, all right? You did great." He looked up at the sky, where the Valari ships were pulling back, regrouping after the shockwave. For now, they had a chance to escape. He didn't know how long it would last, but it was something. Then a soft voice spoke behind him. "You don't understand what she's done." Valira stood there, alone now, her armor scorched and her weapon holstered. There was no hate in her eyes anymore, only fear. Raiden glared at her. "If you're here to finish this, you will have to kill me first." Valira shook her head slowly. "No, human. I came to warn you. That child you saved, she is not just my daughter. She is a key to something far greater. And now, you've awakened it." Raiden frowned, holding Sira close. "What does that mean?" But before she could answer, an explosion ripped through the distance. One of the Valari ships crashed into the ground, flames lighting up the horizon. The sky itself began to crackle with strange blue lightning, like the planet was coming alive. Valyra looked up, her face pale. "It's too late," she said quietly. "They've sensed her power. Others will come." Raiden stared at her in confusion. "Others? Who the hell are you talking about?" Valyra turned toward him, her golden eyes glowing brighter. "Not Valari," she said. "Something older. Something we tried to hide from the galaxy." The ground shook again, harder this time. Rock split open, and strange lights flickered beneath the surface. Raiden tightened his grip on Syrah, his heart pounding. "Then I guess we better run again," he said grimly. Valyra nodded. "Run if you must. But know this, human. By saving her, you may have saved the galaxy, or doomed it." The sky roared as another explosion thundered in the distance, and the hunt began anew. The night was alive with fire and thunder. The ground trembled under Raiden's boots as he ran, carrying Syrah close to his chest. Behind him, the remains of the Valari colony burned, lighting the barren landscape in shades of orange and blue. Alien ships screamed through the sky, hunting, scanning, searching. Each flash of light meant another patrol getting closer. He stumbled into the forest, if it could even be called that. The trees were twisted and dark, their bark glowing faintly like veins of lava beneath the surface. Every step echoed with distant whispers. But it was cover, and right now, that was all that mattered. Raiden stopped near a small clearing, his breath ragged. He gently placed Syrah down on the ground, brushing the dirt from her face. Her breathing was weak, her body still faintly glowing for whatever she had done back there. "Come on, kid," he muttered softly. "Stay with me. You're tougher than this." He tore open a medical pack, pressing a stim injector into her arm. Her glow flickered once, then steadied. Slowly, her eyes opened. "Raiden," she whispered weakly. "Hey, there you are," he said with forced cheer. "Scared me for a minute. You almost blew up the planet. You know that." Her lips curved into the smallest smile. "I didn't mean to." Raiden chuckled, then looked up as a low hum rolled across the forest. He froze. The air shimmered like heat waves, and strange symbols appeared in the dirt around them, glowing blue, pulsing in rhythm with Syrah's heartbeat. He reached for his blaster. "Not again!" Then a voice echoed from behind him, calm but heavy. "You cannot stop what's coming, human." Raiden spun around. Commander Valyra stepped out from the shadows, her armor cracked, her cloak torn. She wasn't holding a weapon. Her face looked different now, tired, haunted. "You followed us," Raiden said coldly. "I had to," she replied. "You don't understand the danger you've unleashed." Raiden stood between her and Syrah. "Then explain it to me." Valyra hesitated, her golden eyes flickering with something like sadness. Long ago, before humans ever reached the stars, there were beings known as the architects. They shaped worlds, created life, and destroyed entire galaxies when their creations defied them. My people, Valari, were their servants. Until we rebelled, we hid one weapon from them, a living one. She looked at Syrah, her voice trembling slightly. "Huh?" Raiden felt his blood run cold. "You mean this kid, this little girl, is some kind of weapon?" "Not a weapon," Valyra said softly. "A seal. The last thing keeping the architect from returning." Syrah's small voice broke the silence. "Mother!" Both Raiden and Valyra froze. Syrah sat up slowly, her eyes glowing brighter now. "You left me." Valyra's expression cracked. "I didn't have a choice," she whispered. "If the others had known what you truly were, they would have destroyed you. I hid you on a dead world, hoping no one would find you. But humans, you always go where you shouldn't." Raiden clenched his fists. "You dumped a child on a dead world and called it mercy." Valyra didn't respond. She just stared at Syrah with tears in her golden eyes. "You were never meant to wake up. The moment your power was released, the signal went out. The architect will come to reclaim what they built." Raiden looked between them, his mind racing. "Then we stopped them." Valyra actually laughed, a short, bitter sound. "You don't stop gods, human. You survive them, if you're lucky." Before Raiden could respond, the ground shook violently. Trees split apart, their glowing bark flaring like molten glass. The air filled with a deep, resonant hum that seemed to vibrate in their bones. Valira's eyes widened. They are already here. Raiden grabbed Syrah, backing away as cracks opened in the sky above them. Actual cracks, glowing white and blue like torn fabric. Through them, shapes began to move. Massive, ancient, mechanical things that looked half alive, half machine. Their voices rumbled across the heavens, not words, but sound so deep it felt like a scream inside the soul. Syrah whimpered, clutching Raiden's hand tightly. "They're calling me." Valira stepped forward, placing her hand over the girl's head. "You must not answer. If they find you, they'll take control." Raiden looked up at the sky, his jaw tight. "So what do? We can't fight that." Valira turned to him. "We can't fight, but there's something else, something ancient buried beneath this planet. The last refuge built by those who defied the architects. If we reach it before they do, we might have a chance." Raiden nodded, though fear gnawed at his gut. "Where is it?" Valira pointed toward the mountains in the distance. "Under there, the Vault of Silence." Raiden glanced at Syrah. "You think you can move?" Syrah looked weak, but her eyes burned with resolve. "I can." He lifted her onto his back, and the three of them began to move through the burning forest. Each step felt heavier than the last. Above them, the cracks in the sky widened, letting through more light and sound. The forest creatures screamed and fled. The world itself seemed to be unraveling. At one point, Raiden looked up and froze. Through the clouds, he saw a gigantic shape descending slowly, its body covered in glowing symbols that matched the ones around Syrah. It wasn't a ship. It was alive, and it was coming straight toward them. Valira looked back, fear playing on her face. "They found her. We must hurry." They ran, stumbling through the rough terrain, the air growing hotter with every step. The hum of the approaching creature grew louder, shaking the ground. Raiden shouted over the noise, "Tell me this place. The vault, what can it do?" Valira answered without looking back. "It can hide her, or it can end her. It depends on what she chooses." Raiden frowned, clutching Syrah tighter. "What do you mean, end her?" But before she could answer, the sky split open completely. A blinding beam of light tore through the clouds and struck the ground behind them. The shockwave threw Raiden off his feet, sending them all tumbling down a slope. He hit the dirt hard, vision spinning. Through the smoke and chaos, he saw the towering figure of the alien god emerging from the light, massive wings of energy unfurling, eyes burning like stars. Syrah lay beside him, trembling but awake. Her eyes glowed in response, brighter than ever before. "It's calling my name," she whispered. Raiden grabbed her hand tightly. "Then don't answer." But deep down, he knew, whatever came next, the galaxy would never be the same again. The world was falling apart around them. The air was thick with heat and dust as Raiden forced himself to his feet, his vision still blurry from the blast. The giant being in the sky hovered like a god, its light so bright it burned through the forest canopy. Every movement it made sent ripples through the air, warping the ground like waves on water. Valira stumbled beside him, her armor scorched, her eyes locked on the being. "They've breached the veil," she said in a trembling voice. "That thing is a harbinger, the first of many." Raiden blinked the sweat and blood from his eyes. "Then we better move before the rest show up." He turned to Syrah, who was on her knees, staring at the glowing cracks in the sky. Her small hands trembled, her breath uneven. "They are calling to me," she whispered. "I can hear their thoughts." Valira knelt beside her. "You must fight it, child. If they find your mind, they will use you." Syrah looked up at her. "They already know where I am." A deep rumble echoed overhead. The harbinger's light flared, and suddenly beams of energy began lancing down from the sky, scouring the land, disintegrating trees, turning stone to ash. Raiden grabbed Syrah and ran, diving behind a jagged rock formation. The blast missed them by inches, the shockwave throwing dust and fire into the air. Valira leapt beside them, breathing hard. "We can't outrun this. We need to reach the vault, now." Raiden nodded, tightening his grip on Syrah. "Then lead the way." They ran again, stumbling through broken ground and burning debris. The air was electric, filled with a hum of alien energy. Every few seconds, another beam struck the ground behind them, shaking the earth like thunder. As they neared the foothills, the terrain shifted from glowing forest to black stone. Strange symbols were carved into the cliffs, glowing faintly in the dark. The closer they got, the more the symbols pulsed in time with Syrah's heartbeat. Raiden slowed down, breathing heavily. "Valira, what is this place?" "The outer walls of the vault," she said. "Only her presence can open it." Syrah looked up at the carvings, her eyes glowing in rhythm with the symbols. "I can feel something," she whispered, "like it's waiting for me." "Then open it," Raiden said urgently, "before that thing finds us." Syrah took a step forward and placed her small hand against the stone. The symbols flared with blinding light, and the ground rumbled. A deep groaning sound filled the air as a massive circular doorway began to shift, layers of stone sliding aside like gears in a machine. The air inside the opening shimmered with blue energy. Valira looked at Raiden. "Once we enter, there's no turning back." "Good," he said. "I'm done running." They stepped inside just as another beam from the Harbinger struck the ground behind them, sealing the entrance with a roar of energy. Inside, everything went quiet. The air was still, heavy with ancient power. The vault was enormous, a cathedral of alien design, filled with glowing pillars, suspended bridges, and rivers of blue light flowing through transparent walls. The hum of energy was so deep it vibrated in their bones. Syrah looked around in awe. "It feels alive." Valira nodded slowly. "It is. The vault was built by the ones who rebelled against the architects. It holds knowledge and power beyond understanding. And it also holds the only weapon capable of stopping them." Raiden raised an eyebrow. "I thought you said we couldn't stop them." Valira looked at him grimly. "We can't, but she can." Syrah turned to her. "Me? I don't understand any of this. I'm just me." "You're not just you," Valira said gently. "You're the last living link to the power that sealed the architects away. Inside you is their creation and their downfall." Before Raiden could ask what she meant, the vault trembled. The blue light dimmed, replaced by pulsing red veins running through the walls. Valira's expression darkened. "They found us." Syrah backed away, fear in her glowing eyes. "They're inside my head. I can feel them." Raiden grabbed her shoulders. "Listen to me. You're stronger than they are. You don't belong to them." She shook her head. "They're showing me things. Whole worlds. They want me to open something to bring them through." Valira drew her blade, which shimmered with faint light. "If she opens a gateway, everything ends." Raiden looked horrified. "You're not suggesting." Valira didn't answer. Her eyes said everything. Raiden stepped between them. "No, there's another way." Valira's voice cracked. "You think I want this? She's my daughter." Syrah looked at her, tears streaming down her face. "Then help me. Don't hurt me." The vault shook harder now. Cracks spread across the ceiling, revealing glimpses of the glowing sky above. A deep, mechanical roar filled the air. Valira looked up. "The Harbinger is breaking through. We're out of time." Raiden turned to Syrah. "You said they are calling you. Can you call them back? Make them stop?" Syrah hesitated, then closed her eyes. Her glow brightened until it was painful to look at. The hum in the vault matched her heartbeat. The walls began to vibrate, and energy surged through the floor. Valira stepped back in awe. "She's controlling the vault." Syrah's voice echoed, layered and distant. "They will not stop, but I can slow them." Raiden frowned. "How?" She opened her eyes, glowing white-hot, "By becoming the seal again." Valira gasped. "No, that will destroy you." Syrah looked at her mother, calm and resolute. "I was made to protect life. Maybe that's all I was ever meant to do." Raiden shook his head. "There has to be another way." But before anyone could move, the vault's energy surged outward, forming a massive sphere of light around Syrah. The glow intensified until the entire chamber was blinding. Outside, the Harbinger screamed as its energy faltered, its form breaking apart into fragments of light. The cracks in the sky began to close one by one, the light fading. Raiden shielded his eyes, shouting her name, but the sound was swallowed by the light. Then, suddenly, silence. When the brightness faded, the vault was still again. Scylla was gone. Only a faint blue crystal remained where she had stood, pulsing softly like a heartbeat. Valera fell to her knees, tears streaming down her face. She did it. She saved us. Raiden stared at the crystal, his chest heavy. Yeah, he whispered. But at what cost? The two of them stood in the quiet vault, surrounded by the fading glow of a world that had nearly ended, knowing that the war wasn't truly over, just delayed. For a long time, there was only silence in the vault. The air was still, heavy with the echo of what had just happened. Faint blue light pulsed from the crystal that rested on the floor, the last trace of Scylla's power. Raiden knelt beside it, his hand hovering over the smooth surface, afraid to touch it, as if even his breath might break the fragile piece she had created. Valera stood behind him, motionless. Her armor was cracked, her cloak burned at the edges, and her golden eyes were dim. She had seen countless battles, endless death, but never something like this. The loss cut deeper than any wound. She's gone, Raiden whispered, his voice rough. Valera closed her eyes. No, not gone. Transcended. Raiden turned his head slightly, his tone bitter. That's just another word for gone. She became what she was born to be, Valera said softly. The seal is restored. The architects can no longer pass through the veil. For now, the galaxy is safe. Raiden rose to his feet, clenching his fists. Safe? She was just a child. His voice echoed through the chamber, bouncing off the glowing walls. You call that safety? You call that mercy? Valera didn't answer. She couldn't. Her silence said everything. After a long pause, Raiden looked up at the ceiling, where faint cracks still shimmered like veins of light. She saved everything, and no one will ever know. She wouldn't have cared about that, Valera replied quietly. She did it because it was right. That's what made her more human than any of us. Raiden gave a bitter laugh. Funny, coming from you. Valera looked down at the glowing crystal, her expression filled with something between sorrow and pride. You think I don't feel this? You think I don't know what it's like to lose your child? He looked at her, his anger fading into exhaustion. Maybe you do, but you still hid her. You let her live in fear, alone. She didn't deserve that. Valera's gaze hardened. And if I hadn't hidden her, she would have been hunted, used, or destroyed long before you ever found her. You gave her something I couldn't. Kindness. But don't pretend your kind is innocent, human. It was your people who uncovered her tomb. Your curiosity that woke her up. Raiden didn't argue. Deep down, he knew she was right. The vault began to shift around them, the blue light dimming, the walls slowly closing like the petals of a flower returning to sleep. Valera turned toward the exit. The vault is sealing itself again. We should go. Raiden looked at the crystal one more time before gently picking it up. The faint pulse warmed his hand, almost like a heartbeat. She's still in there, he murmured. I can feel her. Then keep her close, Valera said, because the seal will not hold forever. They left the vault in silence, emerging into the mountains under a scarred, gray sky. The ground was littered with ash and debris. The forests were gone, replaced by burned earth and glowing craters. But the cracks in the sky had faded, leaving only the faint shimmer of stars above. Raiden took a deep breath of the smoky air. Looks like it's over. Valera shook her head. It's never over. The architects will wait. They always do. He turned to her. So what now? She looked at the horizon, her voice quiet but steady. Now, we prepare, because one day, that crystal will awaken again. And when it does, she'll need us both. Raiden stared at her for a long time. The idea of working with a woman who once hunted him felt impossible, but he couldn't deny the truth in her words. He looked down at the glowing crystal in his hand, its faint light reflecting in his eyes. You think she'll remember us? Valera nodded slowly. A mother never forgets, and neither does a child. They started walking through the ruins, side by side. The world around them was broken, but still alive. Every step they took was heavy, but filled with purpose. Hours passed before they stopped near a ridge overlooking what was once the Valari capital. The alien towers had fallen, the great dome shattered. Yet in the distance, small lights flickered, survivors, rebuilding. Valara's gaze softened. They will rise again. My people always do. Raiden nodded. Humans too. We're good at surviving. For the first time, a small smile crossed her face. Yes, that's what makes you dangerous. He gave a quiet chuckle. And stubborn. She glanced at him. You risked everything for someone who wasn't even your species. Why? Raiden looked down at the crystal, his voice low. Because no one should have to die alone. Not her. Not anyone. Valara said nothing. But something in her eyes changed, a flicker of respect, maybe even admiration. As night fell, the wind carried the faint hum of energy from a vault, like a distant lullaby. Raiden looked toward it one last time. Good night, kid, he whispered. The crystal pulsed softly in his hand, once as if answering him. Valara turned away, her voice quiet but firm. We must leave this world. There are others who will come looking for her power. If they find this place, everything she sacrificed will be lost. Raiden nodded. Then we protect it. They walked together into the cold night, the stars reflecting in their eyes. Behind them, the vault sealed completely, its light fading into the earth until only silence remained. And somewhere, beyond the stars, something stirred in the void, a whisper, faint but growing stronger. The architects were not gone. They were watching and waiting. Years passed. Worlds changed. The scars of the Great Awakening faded, buried beneath the slow rhythm of rebuilding. But for Raiden, the memories never left. Each night he saw the same vision, a small blue light in the darkness, calling to him like a heartbeat that refused to die. He had left the ruined planet long ago, traveling across distant colonies and abandoned stations. Wherever he went, he carried the crystal, always close, always warm, pulsing softly as if alive. Sometimes, when he closed his eyes, he thought he could hear her voice. A whisper, a child's laugh, a promise. Valara traveled with him. What had started as an easy cooperation had slowly grown into quiet trust. She no longer saw him as just a human soldier, and he no longer saw her as the enemy. They had become something else, survivors of the same wound. One night, on a forgotten moon orbiting a dying star, Raiden sat by a campfire outside their ship. The crystal glowed faintly in his hand. Valara approached, her cloak brushing the dust. It's stronger, she said softly. He nodded. Yeah, the pulses are getting faster. Valara crouched beside him, her golden eyes reflecting the firelight. It means the seal is weakening again. The architects stir. Raiden stared at the horizon. I was hoping it was just, Valara looked at the crystal, her expression torn between grief and wonder. It is her. She's waking, because she must. Every time the architects reach through the void, her power responds. It's her nature. Raiden closed his hand around the crystal, frustration in his voice. Then what's the point? She sacrificed everything to stop them, and now it's all starting again. Valara's voice was calm, but sad, because peace never lasts. But her spirit, what she gave us, is what keeps hope alive. He didn't reply. For a while, they sat in silence, listening to the wind hum softly over the barren land. Then, without warning, the crystal flared with light. The glow spread across Raiden's hand, climbing up his arm like living energy. He gasped and almost dropped it, but Valara grabbed his wrist. Don't fight it, she shouted. Let it show you. A flash consumed his vision. The world vanished. When Raiden opened his eyes, he wasn't on the moon anymore. He stood in a vast white space, endless and silent. In front of him stood Sira, older now, almost grown, her blue skin glowing softly. Her eyes were calm, filled with something ancient. Hello, Raiden, she said with a gentle smile. He froze, tears filling his eyes. Sira, how is this possible? This is only a memory, she said softly, but not of the past, of what's coming. He stepped closer. You're alive. In a way, she said. My essence became part of the seal. But I'm fading. The architects are breaking through again. They've found another world to reach from. Raiden's hands clenched. Tell me where. I'll stop them. She smiled sadly. You can't stop them alone. But you can help others find the light. The vaults were not the only ones built. There are more, hidden across the stars. Each one needs a guardian. You and my mother, you're the last ones who can awaken them. Raiden's throat tightened. Syrah, I can't lose you again. Her form flickered like smoke in the wind. You never lost me, Raiden. You carried me with you all this time. The light grew brighter. Tell my mother. I forgive her. And just like that, she was gone. Raiden fell to his knees, the vision fading into darkness. When he opened his eyes, he was back by the fire, Valyra kneeling beside him, her hand on his shoulder. The crystal was still glowing, brighter than ever before. He looked up at her, his voice shaking. I saw her. Valyra's breath caught. What did she say? He held up the crystal. She said the seal's breaking again. We need to find the other vaults. Valyra stood slowly, her gaze fixed on the stars. Then our journey isn't over. Raiden got to his feet, pocketing the crystal. No, it's just beginning. They packed their gear and walked toward their ship, an old human freighter scarred by time and battle. The engines roared to life, lifting them from the moon's surface. As they rose through the thin atmosphere, the stars stretched out before them like a sea of endless light. Inside the cockpit, the crystal pulsed again, a faint rhythm, steady and alive. Valyra glanced at it. She's guiding us. Raiden nodded. Then let's follow her. The ship jumped into hyperspace, streaks of light stretching across the view. Outside, somewhere in the endless void, unseen things stirred, shapes older than stars, watching, waiting. And deep within the crystal, a faint voice whispered through the dark. I'll be waiting, Raiden, when the stars begin to fall. The galaxy slept again, but not in peace, because somewhere, far beyond the edge of known space, the architects had begun to awaken, and this time humanity and the Valari would stand together. For the first time in history, the galaxy would fight as one,